Next speaker is an award-winning interior and industrial designer, and he's working here from New York City. And a lot of his work is multidisciplinary, including graphic design and identity development. Please welcome Harry Allen.
Hello. I was really perplexed as to what design beyond design meant, the whole concept of it. And he basically said to me, oh, it's like the future of design. And I thought, oh, that I can work with. Design beyond design was a little abstract. And so, but of course, I always just show my own work, you know, and I didn't really have time to develop a thesis and go out and sort of support it. But I thought I would show you the future of design according to me, because it's what I can do. And I went way back to the beginning, and some of you might remember this. Where do I point? Here?
The computer.
Oh, just on the computer. This is what I started doing, and I just wanted to show it because at the time, it was right out of school, it was my thesis in school, and I was looking at modernism was what I was fascinated with, and I did this whole series of systems called living systems, and I feel like it was a very futuristic vision for the time, sort of like utopian, this idea that you would have systems that would take care of every aspect of your life. And it was, you know, it was an aesthetic experiment, although all the pieces came out of the table and you could replace them with all different pieces, functional different pieces. But it was really this, that it came out of that sort of utopian mid-century idea. And then, of course, that directly led to Murray Moss, who was opening a store at that time, saw what I was doing and asked me to design his store. And once again, I applied to that space this sort, like my concept of the future, which was this sort of utopian vision. I was a furniture designer at the time. Basically, this was a gallery space, wooden floor, white walls. We sort of lined everything up, and then I built all of this furniture, or I had it built, all this furniture that went in there, all these cases. This is the first Moss store that we built. This changed. This is now the Moroso store. But I was working off of this sort of mid-century concept of what the future was. Soon thereafter, I combined a love of, I'm going to do this really fast, a love of materials with this sort of systematic thinking. And this was a line of furniture I did. I just produced it out of my studio. I didn't really have a name for it, but basically what these things, the table is held together with the clamps. So it's sort of it refers to wood, how you make furniture anyway. But what I did was I combined all of these materials. And I look back at this and I think, God, that was actually sort of, there was a lot of forethought in that also. Although I was doing it for purely aesthetic reasons, like, oh, that's a beautiful material and that's a beautiful material. But like those two midsections, one is this beautiful composite wood material called Paralam, which we had polished up, so it's a beautiful material, and it's great because it's young trees that you compress together rather than old growth timber. And then right next to it is that confetti recycled material that was really popular at the time. I took it and I put all the sheets together so it's in a block. This is actually a better view of the materials. And then I combined those with some virgin plastic, like all these polished plastic pieces on the corner and plywood. And there's part of me that believes that the future is going to be using these new materials as best you can, but I don't think we're ever going to get rid of the virgin plastics. That's like in this piece, like those clear pieces of plastic there, like that's what makes it pop. But I feel like a little bit of that, you need a little bit of that in order to sell products and make the world more interesting. So this combination, I think I was onto something, but it lasted for a couple of years and then I moved on. And then I included this, and I was happy that I did because there's a few people here from IKEA. This is a lamp that I did for IKEA quite a few years ago, and I could tell this lamp in itself could be a whole dissertation. But the reason that I wanted to stop on this was because I feel like there's inherently in what we do, or what I do, is I'm making things. So it's not really a benevolent profession that I'm in, or like you're burning up the world. You're taking things and consuming them and making more. There's already so much stuff in the world and I'm making more stuff. So I very often look at what we're doing as absurd and and like the scale of working for IKEA too. Like a lot of these lamps got made and sold all over the world. So I don't know. I just wanted to show this because this is the mass production side of my work that I really question it at times. Like I'm glad I made this little lamp and people enjoy it and it's in a lot of homes. But I also there's part of me that questions it. And then you can move on to the even more absurd. This is a product. This is probably I am most well known for this product right now. It's a piggy bank that's cast from a real pig, called Bank in the Form of a Pig, which is, by the way, available in the store upstairs, as an aside. But so this is sort of an absurd premise, right? And why are you making it? I mean, people find joy in it. I sell a lot of them. I thought it was really interesting on the Core 77 Design Awards this year. There was they were like, why do you make this product? And I was entering something completely different. And one of the things was like happiness making, like, or something like that. Like it was just about giving people pleasure. And then I'm thinking, is that a reason to make things, just to make people happy? But one does it, and this pig, I hope that people will keep these pigs for a long time and that they fall more in the category of art than in disposable consumer products. This is a very potentially disposable consumer product that I worked on. Once again, all this work is from, well, the pig is more recent, but this is all work from the 90s that I did with Aveda. And this was a material connection. I went over to material connection. And the great thing about Aveda is, yes, it's a mass product, but Aveda this just demonstrates the importance of the client, because ultimately I am working for the man. I do what the man asked me to do. I need to take the jobs because I need to pay my employees. But then every once in a while you come across a company that's asking you to be much better than yourself, and Aveda is that company. They have a staff environmentalist. They want everything to be as green as possible, and they check the life cycle of things, and they do a lot more work being good for the world than I would do as a lowly designer. But I realize this idea of managing up and trying to frame projects as best you can, and I do the best I can. But this was great because they were asking me to be better than myself, and I went to Material Connection. I found this composite plastic that we used on the case of the lipstick. We were also able to make it, that little plug is the disposable part, so you keep the case on the outside, and so it's a 3-part lipstick. And it was a great project that I did with Chris Hacker he's now at Johnson & Johnson, but this was when he was at Aveda. And I showed this. This is my home, actually, in Bedford. And I show this because this is my utopian fantasy of Moss meeting the real world. I mean, this is nothing like Moss, right? This is my little farmhouse in the country that I renovated, and this is one room in the house. But one of the things that I thought was interesting about this photograph is, that little chair in the corner there came from my grandmother, and all the paintings came from one aspect of the family or another. The coffee table was given to me, the mirror came from my partner, candlesticks I designed. But it's like this very mixed up world, and I actually think that the vision of the future is going to be more like this than Moss. That if we ignore, like, you can ignore all the stuff that we have in our lives and go off and design this perfect utopian shell, as Moss is. And that's great. I love all that too. I was weaned on that. But I also think like this idea, like maybe the world really isn't going to be this modern vision in the end, because how can you ignore all the stuff that's come before? And well, anyway, I'll show the next picture too because it's relevant. This is our dining room, where the shell is actually sort of this. It falls into that utopian category. But it comes from a sort of a decent place because the wood, the floor was already the red oak, and so we just sort of doubled down on what we already had, and then we did the whole shell based on that floor that we had. The chairs are once again from my grandmother. The table is from my partner. So, like, I think this idea of sort of taking what you have and then doubling down on that or expanding on that is actually a good thing and possibly a view of the future. This is a store that I designed in LA, and I show it because it too incorporates a lot of things that have come previously, although it's a pretty modern vision. That skateboard bowl in the back, the big plywood construction, is actually done by an art collaborative called SimpArc, so I had nothing to do with that, although I'd love to take credit for it. Beautiful installation, and it's a skateboard bowl. You can see the kids up on the top skating in it. But you know, as I start, I love demolition in a building, because all of a sudden you start, we were talking about this yesterday at the table, you know, you start seeing all these layers in the building, and those layers are informative and beautiful. And so this floor, you can't really see it here, but it's a patchwork of many different rooms. One was tiled, one was cement, and I thought, wow, that's really beautiful, and you can see the history. There's a lot of information in it, so we kept the floor as is. When I knocked the ceiling out, we saw that beautiful barrel vault, so we kept that, and you're sort of borrowing this scenery and then adding to it. So once again, it's sort of an amalgam, and I think that's where the world is probably going. This is a first aid kit that I did for Johnson & Johnson a few years ago, also with Chris Hacker, who's the guy I did the work for Aveda. And he's a really visionary guy, interesting design sort of guru. He's a design director. And we did this piece, which I think looks very looks very modern and fresh, and it was a redo. I mean, this is the world that's really scary. Packaging. You go into Dwayne Reed and like those shelves of all this plastic stuff. There's so much energy in it. It's all going in the landfill. It's like, oh, that world is the world that scares me so much. It's not really to me, like the pigs of the world that people will cherish and keep on their shelf and pass on to their kids, hopefully. But it's this world of the mass consumables that really scares me. But at the end of this project, Chris, you know, we were like, how do we make this greener? And Chris said, let's just make it out of polypropylene. At least you can recycle it, you know, like, but in that one fell swoop, likewise with the Aveda project, you know, because these are such, how am I doing on time? Which is the actual time? 11:08 on the right?
Yeah, like 3 minutes.
3 minutes, oh my God. So in any event, but I do feel like when you're working at that mass level, just to do one little thing like that, just to move it a little bit, actually does a lot of good in the world. It saved a lot of plastic. It's okay. Okay, well, it's fine. I'm getting there because we're well into recent years. And then this is a project that I did for Corey, and I did their showroom down in Philadelphia. And once again, you can see like it was a beautiful space, so we kept all of the old columns. It was a big automotive. It was actually a production facility in its heyday. And then it's all new, you know, we're making new things, but like I loved the juxtaposition of that old column that we left raw with this very modern table that's all made out of Corian and sort of demonstrates the pliability of Corian. And just as an aside, that window, this has nothing to do with the future, but that window those are actually the window panels that are closed. We took an image out of the window and then broke it up onto 5 panels. There's a way that you can do it with it's a CNC-driven machine that creates a black and white image when light passes through Corian. It digs out more where the image is lighter, so that when you put light behind it, it creates a black and white image. So that when you close those window screens, you're looking at the image, a black and white image of what's outside. So it's sort of a fun play, and it does this weird thing in that it has no perspective to it. And then these are some more material experiments or studio experiments that have yet to be realized, but this is just a series of tin cans that I took and soldered together, and then we've coated them in this spray-on plastic material that keeps them from rusting. And I just use this as storage in my studio, but the idea was to make these real products and to reuse tin cans, which is way more difficult than I ever thought it would be. We went to go produce them in Haiti. Haiti doesn't really have tin cans. Go figure, they have big ones and little ones. They don't have the right size ones. And then the earthquake happened, so the whole thing ended up being shelved for a while. But it's actually back on again a little bit. But it is very difficult. Like if you think, I was like, oh, we'll reuse a tin can. There's a lot of energy in a tin can. Can't we reuse that and just, you know, encapsulate it? It'll be great. And then you realize that getting the label off is a huge hassle, and getting the glue off, and they're all dented, and they're all different shapes. And so it's actually a lot more difficult than what goes on in your head. And then this is a project, that reality line, the pigs and the hands and all those pieces, I keep adding onto that as best I can and moving in different directions. And one of the projects that I did these a few years ago in the studio, and why I included them is because of the way they're manufactured, or the beauty of the way they're manufactured. But I actually caught a firefly, dried it, pinned it and dried it, scanned it into the computer using this, it's a medical device that does scanning of tumors and things like that. Very small things, very accurate. It actually, when you scan it, you get all the information that goes completely through all the veins and everything. Then we blew it up to about 6 inches, lit it with LEDs, and the idea is that it will become a nightlight. And that's in the process of happening. And I just think that's a very modern way to make things, whether it's good for the world or socially responsible, I don't know. But I think that there's an element of the future in the fact that you can just do that, you know. And then the last couple of years I've been backtracking a little bit back to where I was in the beginning. And this is a seating system that I did for Dune, which is a New York-based company. And it's funny, many years I didn't deal with the systems. That was sort of the beginning of what I had done, and I didn't go back. They're hard to sell. It's one of the reasons why I haven't done them. But I stumbled upon this idea. Richie, the guy at Dune, really loved it. And it's 4 pieces, a T, an X, a straight, and a curved piece. And you can form all of these. And those are upholstered sections. You can form all of these. And I think it looks very futuristic, but I'm just talking about the aesthetics. And then this is a bottle that I just did for Marc Jacobs, launched last year, and this is sort of the reality line. Sometimes these studio experiments, like the reality stuff, can actually make it, and you look at the material work that I did at the beginning, that really expressed itself in the commercial end with the Aveda piece. This is sort of the reality coming through, becoming a fragrance bottle for Marc Jacobs. I took that piece of metal and I banged it, and then we scanned it into the computer. And then the last year, it's funny because I've been starting to get a little bit nostalgic and trying to do things in really simple ways. And I'm wondering if this might be a lesson for the future too. Just these are coat racks. Each one of these has a hook on them. And it's just a very simple cut piece of metal, highly decorative, just from a photograph that I took of birds, but really easy to make and really simple construction. And I'm that's where I've been for the last year or so. This is a piece that I did for Skitch, which is an Italian company. Once again, it's the graphic, easy to understand graphic of the home as a storage unit, but it's made out of painted MDF, you know, just really simple materials, easy to make, cheap for people to buy. And then this we just launched at the, let's see a little bit of a house theme going on here. This is called Shed, and it's a cedar storage cabinet that I did for Matter that's clad in cedar shingles, so you sort of get the play on what it does and what it's made of and what it looks like. And it's a pretty big piece that goes in the house for cedar storage. And that's it. That's the end.
Thank you very much.
Go for it.
Of course, I want to buy everything.
Okay, good.
In your presentation, I actually have bought a lot of the pieces, like the IKEA lamp, which was $15.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. Is the cedar shed for outdoor or indoor? A real consumer question.
No, it was meant for indoor. I liked the play of bringing that outdoor material inside, but I have been thinking that we should do, it's not cheap, it's a very expensive piece at Matter, done sort of as a limited, but I thought it'd be fun to do a series for the outdoor that you leave outside so it weathers and then sell them as weathered pieces. But I haven't sprung that on Jamie yet, so we'll have to see how that goes. Got to sell the first one first,
Yeah.
but sounds like, okay.
Any more questions? Anybody?
So I just had a curiosity. When you scanned the bugs and stuff like that, are you actually, this is your machine, or is it going to the hospital or a university?
No, I'm sure it's a very expensive piece of machinery made in Belgium, and there's I located some company out in Pennsylvania that does that. That's what they do, and they do it for it's mainly academic. You know, someone will give them a piece of tissue, a lot of medical things, and they look at the structure because it scans all the way through for me to produce those with any, efficiency, I have to remove all the information on the inside because it just builds a whole bug, basically.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Very good.
Nice to have you. Okay, so, okay, thank you very much.